D.B. Cooper, who he most likely is. The case of America's most famous skyjacking has remained unresolved for 52 years, baffled the FBI and the public, and piqued the interest of amateur detectives and conspiracy theorists for decades. Due to the absence of concrete evidence, reliance on eyewitness testimony, and James Bond-style parachute escape, the enigma of D.B. Cooper has become an American legend. Will the identity of this infamous sky pirate ever be revealed? What happened on that day? Who are the main suspects? And which one of our two main suspects are you, the Bad Things crew, going to choose as the most likely to be D.B. Cooper? On November 24, 1971, the day before Thanksgiving, an unidentified man bought a cash ticket on Northwest Orient Airlines Flight 305 from Portland to Seattle under the name Dan Cooper, which was misreported as D.B. Cooper by the media. According to the testimony of eyewitnesses, Cooper was in his 40s, between 5'10" and 6 foot tall, weighed 180 pounds, and had dark hair. He was carrying an attaché case and was dressed in a black suit, white shirt, narrow black clip-on tie with a pearl tie clip, black overcoat, and brown shoes. Cooper requested a bourbon and soda from Tina Mucklow, the flight attendant, before departure. Cooper summoned Mucklow shortly after 3 p.m. and delivered her an all-caps note reading, "I have a bomb in my briefcase. I will use it if necessary. I want you to sit next to me. You are being hijacked." Mucklow sat next to Cooper, and when he opened the case, she saw what looked like wires and sticks of dynamite. Cooper dictated a second note to the pilots, requesting 4 parachutes and $200,000 in $20 bills, which Mucklow took to the pilots. Cooper exchanged the passengers for the parachutes and money when the plane landed in Seattle, but forced the aircraft personnel to return to the aircraft with him. They took off once more, setting a course for Mexico and flying at a maximum altitude of 10,000 feet. Cooper shocked the crew shortly after 8 p.m. when he leaped from the aircraft with the cash into a remote wilderness area between Seattle and Reno. Other than Cooper's true identity, the greatest enigma surrounding the case is what transpired after his dramatic parachute egress from the aircraft. Investigators and researchers have differing hypotheses. The circumstantial evidence points to Cooper's death. According to the FBI, Cooper leaped from the plane at night into a forested wilderness area. His clothing was more appropriate for a wedding or a day at the office than a leap from an aircraft. The parachute given to him was also incapable of being steered. Special Agent Larry Carr, a member of the FBI who assumed responsibility for the investigation in the 2000s, concluded, "No experienced parachutist would have jumped in the pitch-black night, in the rain, with a 200-mile-an-hour wind in his face, wearing loafers and a trench coat. It was simply too risky." He also missed that his reserve chute was only for training and had been sewn shut, something a skilled skydiver would have checked. Some of Cooper's ransom money was recovered in 1980 when a young boy discovered a bundle of decaying $20 banknotes on the shore of the Columbia River near Vancouver. This is added evidence showing that Cooper may have died from his jump. The FBI has investigated approximately 1,000 suspects, whittling down their list to 24 persons of interest over the years. If Cooper landed safely and is still alive today, he would be in his late 80s or early 90s today. Undoubtedly, the 1980 recovery of some ransom money was a significant development in the investigation. Still, Cooper's black clip-on tie, which he removed before jumping, has provided investigators with information that, with the advent of DNA profiling, may allow them to identify Cooper. In 2007, the FBI discovered 3 distinct DNA samples on the tie, but it is impossible to determine if any samples belong to Cooper. Until now, none of the primary suspects in the case have been a match, leaving investigators as baffled as they were before the discovery of the DNA. Even if the FBI could match Cooper's DNA on the tie to a suspect, this is insufficient evidence to positively identify the hijacker. Citizen Sleuths, a group of amateur investigators, have discovered added forensic evidence that may reveal Cooper's true identity. After consulting with the FBI, the group of scientists have been re-evaluating the case. Early in 2017, the citizen sleuths conducted a comprehensive examination of the necktie using an electron microscope, which revealed over 100,000 particles, including titanium and other corrosion-resistant metals. According to this analysis, Cooper may have worked in the aerospace or electronics industries, which would have given him intimate knowledge of aircraft apparatus and exposed him to the types of metallic elements discovered on his tie. Unfortunately, the connection is insufficient to link anyone to the case. The only clues to D.B. Cooper's identity are the DNA and particles on his tie, his confidence in parachuting in less than favorable conditions, and his apparent bomb-making skills. When looking at possible suspects, we need to keep this in mind. Our first suspect is Robert Rackstraw. Thomas Colbert, a documentary filmmaker, released a film in 2016 alleging that D.B. Cooper was actually Robert Rackstraw, a native of Ohio. Cooper, according to Colbert, not only survived the fall, but also lived a long, vivid life, accumulating an extensive criminal record and eventually living in San Diego, California. Rackstraw was a veteran of the Vietnam War and a paratrooper, so he had the necessary skills to implement the hijacking and subsequent daring escape. According to those who knew him, he also had a murky background. Robert Pudgy Hunt, an ex-colleague of Rackstraw, remarked, "He had a criminal mind." In 1978, Rackstraw staged his own death in a plane accident to avoid allegations of passing bad checks and stealing a plane, just months after a sympathetic jury acquitted him of murdering his stepfather. After being convicted on fraud charges and serving time in Folsom State Prison, he started his own business and earned a degree in economics from the University of San Francisco. Colbert and his team of investigators concluded that Rackstraw was the culprit based on examining his explosives training, paratrooper experience, and photographs bearing a remarkable physical resemblance to descriptions of the skyjacker. Perhaps most incriminating, Colbert employed code breakers to read letters allegedly from Cooper that were sent to newspapers years after the incident, even though many investigators believe they were likely hoaxes. The codebreakers found a string of seemingly arbitrary numbers in one of the letters as a code, which, when translated, revealed the letter's author to be First Lieutenant Robert Rackstraw. Even Rackstraw had previously implied that he was the infamous hijacker, telling reporters, "I wouldn't discount myself," although he later claimed he was teasing. Although the FBI momentarily investigated him in connection with the Cooper case, they ultimately ruled him out as a suspect because he was too young at the time of the crime. Throughout his life, Rackstraw never admitted or categorically refuted rumors that he was the actual D.B. Cooper. In 2019, Rackstraw passed away at the age of 75, and while some individuals, such as Colbert, believe they have solved the case, the real story behind the D.B. Cooper enigma may have perished with Rackstraw. Number 2 on our list is William Gossett. William Wolfgang Gossett is the most recent suspect identified by attorney Galen Cook, who has been investigating the case for years. Cook is examining a potential witness to the parachute jump from the plane, the prospect that D.B. Cooper sent letters to newspapers, and the analysis of Cooper's discovered money. The FBI is becoming increasingly interested in the work of Cook and the suspect Gossett. The FBI informed Cook in August 2011 that Gossett and another unnamed suspect remain viable suspects. Here is what we know about D.B. Cooper suspect William P. Gossett. William Pratt Gossett was born in 1930 in San Diego. He served with the U.S. Marines, Army Air Force, and the U.S. Army, completed missions in Korea and Vietnam, and was decorated for his service. He was an expert survivalist and parachutist. 2 years after the hijacking, he retired from the Army at Fort Lewis, Washington, as an ROTC instructor in 1973. Even though the FBI has known of him for years, he still is a potential suspect in the case, and is the only significant suspect who has not been eliminated. He often discussed the D.B. Cooper skyjacking. He remarked to one of his spouses that he could write the epitaph for D.B. Cooper. William Gossett told his cousin Charles Gossett that he knew everything about D.B. Cooper, but could not discuss it with Charles. According to his son Greg, Gossett told 3 of his sons that he was the skyjacker. Cook also claims he confessed to a retired Salt Lake City judge and a close acquaintance he worked with at the Salt Lake City Public Defender's Office that he was the skyjacker. The judge said, "In 1977, he walked into my office and closed the door and said he thought he might be in some trouble, that he was involved in a hijacking in Portland and Seattle a few years ago, and that he might have left prints behind. He said he was D.B. Cooper. I told him to keep his mouth shut and don't do anything stupid and not to bring it up again." Greg Gossett asserts that his father was perpetually cash-strapped and had a gambling problem. Only weeks after the hijacking, he claims his father showed him wads of currency shortly before Christmas in 1971. He believes that he stored some of the cash in a safe deposit box in Vancouver and that he may have lost a majority of it in Las Vegas casinos, even though none of the recorded serial numbers of the cash have ever been located, except for the money discovered in 1980 in the Columbia River. A woman claiming to be Gossett's niece recalled her uncle having a substantial sum of money during Christmas 1971, corroborating Greg Gossett's claim. Gossett worked at Weber State College before becoming a private investigator specializing in money fraud, cults, and disappearances. At one point, the FBI praised him for his help in rescuing a woman from Bhagwan Rajneesh's compound in Antelope, Oregon. Midway through the 1970s, Gossett began to sport a mustache and goatee and changed his name to Wolfgang or Wolf. In 1988, he legally changed his name to Wolfgang and joined the Old Catholic Church, SLC Diocese, as a priest. These are only a few instances in which it appears that Gossett tried to conceal his identity. Cook has also collected Gossett's DNA and fingerprints and supplied them to the FBI. Cook has interviewed all 5 of the D.B. Cooper flight's surviving crew members. Cook showed photographs of Gossett to a flight attendant who witnessed the Cooper hijacker up close. She told Cook that Gossett resembled the hijacker and that she believed the hijacker had darkened his complexion with makeup on the day of the skyjacking. According to Cook, despite Gossett's multiple marriages, he was known to be a recluse. Gossett had separated from his first wife and was living alone in an apartment in Ogden, Utah at the time of the hijacking. In an interview with Dan Tilkin conducted in July 2008, Gossett's wife of 25 years said that she was kind of dumbfounded when she saw her husband's image alongside the FBI depiction of the Cooper suspect. Marilyn Smith said, "It was a perfect match. He never told me he was D.B. Cooper, but he always used the third person. D.B. Cooper would have hiked out this way, or he would have done this," she would say. She acknowledged that he was eccentric and enjoyed telling stories, but said, "In the D.B. Cooper story, that would never change." The most persuasive circumstantial evidence includes flight attendant Florence Schaffner's assertion that photographs of Gossett resembled those of Cooper. An early 1970s photograph of Gossett resembles the second suspect depiction, Composite B, released by the FBI. Gossett drank bourbon and smoked tobacco like Cooper. Gossett had paratrooping experience as a Marine and U.S. Army soldier. He also had night and low-altitude paratrooping experience. Major Paletti, Gossett's commanding officer at Weber State College, said that Gossett could have left his position before and after Thanksgiving 1971. When flight attendant Florence Schaffner asked why he was hijacking the plane, Cooper replied that he had a grudge. One of Gossett's spouses, Marilyn Smith, said that he was dissatisfied with his position in the Army at the time of the hijacking. In addition, he had marital and financial issues, as well as child custody disputes. Gossett traveled to Vancouver, Canada with his son in August of 1973, just days after retiring from the Army at Fort Lewis. Later, he revealed to his son that the ransom money was kept in a Vancouver safety deposit box. A letter bearing the signature of D.B. Cooper was sent from Vancouver shortly after the hijacking. Gossett had traveled to Vancouver many times over the years after the skyjacking. The 4th letter that D.B. Cooper sent to the Reno Evening Gazette discussed planning for retirement. Gossett's marriage proposal to his 5th wife in 1978 was written on stationery from the MGM Grand, Reno. 2 of the 4 Cooper letters were sent to the Reno Evening Gazette. Cooper suggested landing in Reno when the flight crew informed him that the jet required refueling before continuing to Mexico. They did land in Reno, but without Cooper. According to one of Gossett's spouses, he spent a great deal of time in Reno, Nevada, without her knowing precisely why. Gossett died in Oregon on September 1, 2003, of natural causes at age 73. The D.B. Cooper case may never be solved, adding to its mystique. Or is one of these suspects the infamous D.B. Cooper? Let us know what you think in the comments section. We would love to hear from you. If you love our content and want to support the channel, feel free to check our web shop where you can find exclusive true crime merch brought to you by Bad Things.